Hades 2 is a roguelike, where you play as Melinoe, sister to Zagreus, the main character from Hades 1. Every night you journey out in an attempt to defeat Kronos, but the path to kill time is going to be a long one. There's a lot of systems that you'll interact with, and a lot of things that you need to learn and master if you're going to succeed. Luckily, should you fail, that's not an issue at all. Everyone's there to cheer you along, and in fact that's one of the core elements of a game's story. Failure is super normal because it's part of playing a roguelike, so don't get too discouraged. But today, I'm going to break down the various game systems you interact with, so that hopefully you can find success sooner rather than later. With that said, Hades 2 is currently in early access, so a lot might change for the full release, and the best way to keep up with any updates is to get subscribed and hey, maybe leave a like while you're down there. Because if there's future updates, I'm definitely going to be covering them. For now, let's get into the beginner's guide. First up, the game's going to dump you right into the action off the start, which means you're going to have to start fighting enemies and gathering boons. You get these boons from the various Olympians. They allow you to enhance your attack, special, cast, or sprint, in short, your combat abilities, or offer some passive bonuses, which can do things like give you more life, give you healing, slow enemy projectiles, and much, much more. At the start, you should try to get a boon from each of the different Olympians, just to see what they offer. For example, one of my favorite Olympians to get a boon from is Demeter, because she allows you to inflict freeze, preventing enemies from moving and giving you a perfect window of opportunity for damage. But you might prefer Hestia as you enjoy scorching your foes, or maybe Poseidon where you can knock enemies back and deal massive splash damage. Later on, you'll unlock synergy systems between the boons. Duo boons trigger an effect based on using skills from two separate gods together. And also, each boon has an element. At the start, these are hidden, but once revealed via an incantation, don't worry, we'll explain that later, you can stack multiple boons of the same element to activate additional bonuses. You can think of boons as putting your build together within each run. In addition to boons, there's two special effects that work a little bit differently. The first is Daedalus's Hammer. This allows you to enhance your weapon, modifying the attack, special, or other properties about it. In general, this either strictly enhances a bonus, such as the Shimmering Moonshot allowing the special to bounce so that you deal more damage and clear more enemies, or the Rapid Moonfire where it's faster and has more power, making you kind of a special build, or sometimes it has a really powerful bonus like the Giga Moonburst where you get plus 300% damage, but with a significant downside of channeling 40 more magic. In addition, as you journey across Erebus, you may encounter holes in the floor that ask for your blood. These lead you to Chaos, the primordial originator, the source of everything, and Chaos is more than happy to bless you with a boon, if you pay the price, because all of Chaos's boons have a bit of a curse attached. So you need to clear the negative effect to gain the positive one. These negatives include things like restricting your moveset, having foes throw bombs at you, or causing you to move slower or take increased damage. However, the power of the Chaos boons is undeniable, so it's absolutely worth taking that risk. So now, let's do a quick breakdown of what you're actually doing in combat. First up, your attack. Each weapon has a unique attack pattern. This can take the form of a combo, usually ending in a large, heavier strike, or a rapid flurry of blows. In addition, you can hold your attack key to charge up an Omega attack. This consumes your magic and modifies the attack in a different way. A good example of this is the Omega attack on the Moonstone Axe is just Whirlwind, so if you like spinning to win, this is going to be the weapon for you. In addition, each weapon has its own special. For example, the Sister Blades have a special where you throw a knife. But the Omega special on the Sister Blades throws a fan of knives. You can position yourself close to an enemy to deal lots of single target damage, or far away to scythe the blades across a room. In general, a lot of your combat is alternating between the attack and the special, depending on what the situation calls for. When you strike an enemy, they get interrupted, unless they have armor. If they have armor, they're just going to smack you right back in the face, so it might behoove you to keep your distance or dash behind them. Then from there you have two generic combat tools, your cast and your dash. Your cast creates a circle which snares foes, and the Omega version deals damage in addition to snaring. Many boons modify how your cast behaves, turning it into a projectile or making it significantly better at dealing damage. Your dash, on the other hand, allows you to avoid damage. Just keep in mind, after you dash, you aren't able to dash again until the trail behind Melinoe returns to her. If you hold down your dash button, instead of charging an Omega dash, you get to sprint. This allows you to outrun certain enemy attacks or rapidly cover distance. And unlike the Omega versions of skills, it doesn't consume any magic. Now, one big change from Hades 1 to Hades 2 is the call system has been completely revamped. Now it's a blessing from Selene, the goddess of the moon, and to enhance it, you walk the path of stars. When you first invoke Selene, this works just like getting a blessing from any of the Olympians, you'll be offered one of several paths. In short, the option at the top has the least customizability, and the option at the bottom has the most. Then, when you encounter her again, each subsequent time you'll get a bunch of skill points to allocate on your path of stars, customizing the move as you please. Just be aware that you need to expend a certain amount of magic to be able to trigger this ability, which means it sometimes can be clunky, especially if it requires a very high amount like 120 or 200. So now, how do you progress through Erebus and try to regain the House of Hades? Well, you're going to do so by making choices. Each time you finish an encounter, you'll get a reward, and then you have to choose which way to go next. Some of these rewards are things like ashes, psyche, and bones that are used for meta progression of a Crossroads. And just as a note, these resources are very important, so don't neglect them just because they don't give you power directly within the run. On the other hand, gold gives you progression within the run. You can go to Charon shops and later after you unlock them, the Well of Charon, to spend that gold on various rewards. And nectar is used to build relationships with the characters and obtain keepsakes. As you traverse, keep an eye out for resources. These are things like flowers, dirt patches, and ore. For some of them, like flowers, you'll be able to just pick them. For others, you'll need a tool to gather them. You end up using these resources as part of your incantations and unlocking new items and systems within the game. In addition to choosing a room based on the reward, you also want to choose based on what it might contain. For example, if a room has a skull icon, that means it contains a more dangerous enemy. This foe will always be armored and always have their own unique mechanics, but it can be worth it as the reward's often substantial. On the other hand, if you see, well, a pair of hands, then expect a friendly guest that will offer you one of several rewards. The exact guest does depend on the area, and for example, in Oceanus, you can encounter Narcissus, who yes, is still staring at his own reflection, and he'll give you something just to make you go away as soon as possible. Not only is this a nice break from combat allowing you to conserve health, but it's a way to get some really awesome things like a Death Defiance that you wouldn't be able to otherwise obtain. Now, if you see a well-marked purse icon, that's Charon's shop. The shop always appears in the wave before the boss, and you will never fight enemies in the wave before the boss, so there's no need to go to the shop if you don't have any money, take the other reward. But here he sells a variety of items. The exact assortment is random every time, and it's absolutely worth perusing if you have the coin to spare. In addition to right before the boss, you'll also randomly encounter Charon's shop once throughout the level, usually right about the midway point. Then finally, each area has its own unique boss. For example, this is the boss of the first area. As you go down, the bosses do generally get harder. They have their own mechanics, but the telegraphs are quite nice. So if you fail, don't worry. Just learn from your mistakes, watch what they do, and remember how you dodge them. There's always a pattern to these things. Just think of it like a dance. Instead of 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, think dodge the axe, dodge the explosion, and no, don't fall into a spike trap. And that's about it for the basics of combat. But combat is only about half of Hades 2. The other half is building relationships with characters and advancing your meta progression in the Crossroads. So now let's go take a look around the Crossroads, and then I'll get into the systems in a little bit more depth after that. So here we have the Crossroads. You start with Mel's 10, and her nice friend the Shade Dora, who you can walk through, because she's a shade. Coming down here, you'll find something very familiar if you played Hades 1.
A fated list of minor prophecies.
All these prophecies give you a reward, so after you unlock this, you should absolutely come back and check it. Then over here, we have various NPCs who you can talk to.
New shipment there.
A nice shopkeeper that you're able to unlock. A shipment directly from Lord Charon. Every time you go down and meet him, he has a chance to give you a golden pass. Turn these in and you get stuff like Moondust, Fate Fabric, Psyche, or Ashes. Basically things to use on the meta progression. Over here, you've got the Cauldron. Now, of course, here you have everything that you want to unlock. I've got quite a bit unlocked already, but I also have quite a bit to go. One thing that I've definitely been prioritizing is fountain stuff, because having more healing is really, really cool. You do this with various materials that you gather down in the underworld. So to get Golden Life Spring, I need 3 Shade Rot and 3 Marble. Sounds like I'm going to need to break out the old pickaxe. On the other hand, Rite of Social Solidarity, I need Nectar and Garlic. You know, to keep people away from you. Then coming over here, you can plant various seeds. This is again something unlocked by incantations of a cauldron, so you might not have this when you're first starting. Moving on to the next area, this is your altar where you meditate. These are your arcana, basically taking the place of the Mirror of Night. You start with very few unlocked, and slowly more get revealed and unlocked by spending ashes. You then equip them by using Grasp, which is increased via spending Psyche. And last up, the other meta progression system is Insights, where you get meta progression for your meta progression. Gotta love when things overlap like that. And so here, for example, instead of sprinting 20% faster, now I can sprint 25% faster. Last up, you've got your keepsakes. This works the same as Hades 1. When you equip a keepsake, you get a bonus. If you keep using it, it gains levels, and that bonus increases. To get these, you need to give nectar as a gift to the various NPCs around the Crossroads and out in the world. This includes the Olympians, pretty much everyone. Just offer them a gift when you meet them. It's the polite thing to do, and you might get some cool keepsakes. This is one of the more early access things, as right now they don't have unique art, but I'm sure that's coming in the future. In addition, you can select your tool. You're only able to bring one tool into each encounter. So on my next run, I'm going to grab a pick. You also select your weapon. There's staff, daggers, wands, axe, and skull.
Why not?
So I'm going to grab this to get the bone bonus. I suggest experimenting with each new weapon to find one that fits you the best. And last but certainly not least, here's Skelly. Yep, he is back. Commander Skelemius is in his rightful place. Last up, when you start, you'll only be able to go down. However, if you continue progressing, one of the things you unlock is the ability to go up, and this is important because it unlocks new resources, new challenges, and advances the story. And so that's the basic gameplay loop. Let's talk about some of these meta progression systems in a little bit more detail now. So first up, the meta progression system that you're going to be interacting with a lot early is the Cauldron. Gather resources and cast incantations. These bring more characters to the Crossroad. These give you more game systems to interact with, and they allow you to journey to different areas, to gather more resources and continue this loop. In short, if you ever feel like your progression has stalled and you're like, how do I unlock that? It's probably going to be back at the Cauldron. Also, once you unlock the Forget-Me-Not feature, you can always pin a recipe and just keep an eye on it for later. This will give you a little icon that gives you a hint as to what to bring and where to look if you're trying to get that resource. Some are pretty ubiquitous, like Psyche and Ashes, whereas others are region-specific. A good example of this would be Silver Ore, that only appears within the first region. You can kind of think of a Cauldron as meta progression for the Crossroads itself, rather than for your character. That said, Arcana is meta progression for Mel. You meditate at the altar to activate Arcanas. Like I said before, this replaces the Mirror of Night from Hades 1, and has several very powerful bonuses. For example, early on you'll get the Titan card, which gives you health and magic. This is very, very important as it massively increases your survivability. A little bit later, you'll get the Eternity card, where you set forth each night with one Death Defiance. Again, a really, really, really important upgrade that you should focus on ASAP. Beyond that, things definitely get a little bit more subjective. Personally, I'm a big fan of a Sorceress, so I would absolutely focus on unlocking that one. Zero-cost cards, on the other hand, work a little bit differently. They have what is called an Awakening, where they activate for free, but only if you followed the rules. Let's just say the Centaur is an example. The Awakening requires that you activate cards which use 1 through 5 grasp. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Once you've completed your straight, you'll have the Centaur active, and every 5 locations gain 3 health and 3 magic. Later on, once you unlock Insights, you'll further enhance these bonuses by spending Moondust and other resources. Then you have your tools and tools of a trade, the weapons that Mel can use, and the tools that gather resources. So there are currently 5 weapons in Hades 2. The Witch's Staff is the first thing you start with, and honestly I think it's the most beginner friendly. It's very easy to use because the combos are very straightforward. You have a melee attack and a ranged special. Also, I especially like the fact that you fire out your melee attack's Omega version in a line, dealing magical damage to everything around you. Then the Sister Blades, which for a long time was absolutely my favorite weapon. Now I'm kind of going back and forth between a few because the weapons are really good. In this case, your attack is a combo flurry ending in a sweeping slash. The charged version of this just being the sweeping slash itself. The special is you throw a dagger at an enemy. This is clearly not meant to be spammed because it doesn't spam fluidly. This doesn't feel like an oversight or a bug, it feels very intentional. Next up, the Moonstone Axe, which has wide sweeping attacks. It's quite slow, but very hard hitting. And this is one of the weapons that at first I didn't like it, but now I've warmed up to it, especially because I found out that charge attack is just whirlwind, and the special is a block effect. And so you block until the enemy has attacked, then counter with your own strike. and the charged version of your special fires a whole bunch of damage in a line. Next up, there's the Umbral Flames, the Twin Wands, which I do not enjoy this weapon at all. They fire wand projectiles, and you hold to fire more rapidly, eventually spending magic to launch harder hitting projectiles. Admittedly, even if their attack isn't my cup of tea, their special is pretty cool. It's a spiraling orb that damages enemies along its path, with the Omega version being 2 orbs that rotate around Melinoe, dealing damage for a short duration. I quite like the special and do not like the attack, so overall it feels a little bit clunky to me. And last up, the Argent Skull, which basically combines the mobility of the shield from Hades with the playstyle of the Adamant Rail. And I have to say, this is really cool. It feels super unique. Your attack fires the skull of the enemy, which uses up to 3 shells. Once you run out of shells, you have to go reclaim them. Oh, they will come back to you after a little bit if they go out of bounds or something, but you should try to avoid that as it's a massive DPS loss. The charged version, a skull flies up into the air and slams down on an enemy, dealing damage in an AoE. Then for the special, you just charge, and you can charge it up to charge better, creating secondary projectiles off along the sides. This is a very fun and unique playstyle that blends the ranged damage that you have from the wand or the staff with the mobility you'd expect from a melee weapon like the axe or daggers. Then in terms of tools, your pickaxe harvests ore and rock. Your tablet harvests Psyche by allowing you to compel and soothe shades, bringing them to the Crossroads. It's kind of a little Simon Says sort of minigame. The shovel's used to dig up seeds. These are used to, well, grow plants, which are then used in various meta progression features like the Cauldron. And last up, the fishing rod. Guess what you use it for? You catch fish, and it's the exact same fishing minigame as Hades 1. Just wait until the bobber goes completely under the water, and you're good to catch something. Now, with that said, the meta systems take quite a bit of time to unlock, and do get pretty complex. One builds on another, so I'm sure this was a lot to take in. Feel free to use the timestamps to go back to a different portion of a video, or just come back here once you've played the game a bit more and you want to know extra information. I didn't cover absolutely everything here. For example, I haven't covered the familiar system at all. I played the game for quite a long time before even unlocking it, and also because some of these systems feel like they're going to be fleshed out more over the duration of early access. So there's a very good chance that when the game fully releases, I'm going to update this video, but we'll see. It all depends on how much changes and how much stays the same. When you first start Hades 2, the runs can absolutely feel daunting. You feel like you do no damage, like boons aren't strong enough, and like bosses hit way too hard. But as you learn the patterns and as your confidence grows, you'll be able to do some of the fights without taking much damage or maybe without getting hit at all. Furthermore, as you continue with the meta progression systems, just remember everything you do adds up. Those resources that you're collecting shouldn't just sit there because you're not supposed to be making the number go bigger. You're supposed to spend them. This is progress that you can absolutely use to improve your situation right now. And the more freely you spend your resources, the faster you'll progress to get more resources to spend them again and continue the cycle. So far, I've been having an absolute blast with Hades 2. It's everything I'd want from a Hades sequel, which is to say, more Hades, but also because it is in early access, it's entirely possible things will change. So if you have any more questions about the game, do be sure to let me know. And if you want to be updated on more guides, get subscribed, because I'm definitely going to be making more in the future. That said, if you're looking for something else to watch, maybe check out my first impressions of a game based on my first couple hours of gameplay, or any of the other recommendations that'll be on screen soon. Before I go, I'd like to take a minute to thank my patrons and channel members for the continued support. For as low as $1 a month, you can help make videos just like this one possible. Link to support is also down below. And thanks for everyone who watched to the end. I'm glad you enjoyed the video, I hope you learned something, enjoy the game, and I'll see you in the next one.